Hello and welcome back to Pin My Podfic. This will be the reading of After the Fall, Chapter 10, A Home Awaits, Part 3, and really just finishing this chapter, so yeah. And don't forget, check out the original author, Innocent with one _reader. So yeah, let's get on with the chapter. Well, with finishing the chapter. Chapter 10, A Home Awaits, Part 3. The old phone on the kitchen wall broke the silence with a dry, metallic ring. So out of place in that sleeping mansion, it seemed to echo through the halls like a call from ghosts. Alfred, drying his hands on the apron, lifted his eyes to the device. He stood still for a moment, listening to that repetitive sound, almost hesitant, as if even the machine were aware of the gravity of what it carried. He drew a deep breath, straightening his shoulders, and walked toward it, each step heavy with quiet dignity. Wayne Manor, he announced as he answered, with the unshakable politeness that neither war nor loss nor solitude had ever stripped from him. On the other side, a familiar voice tinged with weariness. Alfred, it's Lois Lane. He closed his eyes for a brief instant, recognizing not only the voice but the weight of a world that no longer existed. Miss Lane, he replied, solemn and worn. It's good to hear from you. There was a brief pause on the line, filled with the faint tremor of held-back emotion. Then Lois spoke again, her tone wavering between urgency and fragility. I called because I need to know if at least Dick and maybe someone else was alive. Alfred drew a slow, steady breath, letting his voice carry the weight of reassurance. Master Dick is alive, Miss Lane, and he is not alone. Alfred sat down in the worn leather chair, the phone still warm in his trembling hands. Lois's voice carried across the line with a mix of firmness and exhaustion. I still can't believe it all. And ended like this. Neither can I, Miss Lane, neither can I. On the other side, a pause, memories intertwining with his own. You know, Clark used to talk a lot about Dick, said the boy had the same stubborn courage as Batman, but lighter, that he could still smile even after a bad night. Alfred smiled sadly. Mr. Kent treated him almost like a son, and Master Dick admired him the same way. Many times I saw him more excited about a visit from him than about any Christmas gift. A muffled, brief laugh. I remember once Clark had came back from a patrol with you and told me Dick insisted on showing him how the cinema room projector worked. Wanted Superman to watch the same old cartoon you used to. The memory tightened Alfred's chest. Yes, Robin Hood, 1938. Master Dick loved to imagine Bruce as Errol Flynn in green tights, but he would never admit it out loud. His voice broke for an instant, before steadying again. Mr. Kent pretended not to notice when Bruce smiled in the dark of the room. Lois drew in a breath, hesitating. John, Martha and I are in Smallville, safe, for now, helping however we can. Alfred drew in a breath. No, Alfred let out a discreet smile. That brings me relief. As soon as I can, I'll come to Gotham. I need to see Dick. I need to see all of you. The doors will always be open, Miss Lane. They exchanged brief goodbyes, heavy with what was left unsaid. When the line went quiet, the silence felt heavier, but not for long. The phone rang again. Alfred already knew the next voice would carry a different kind of pain. Wayne Manor, he repeated, composure intact. On the other end, a voice broke. Alfred, it's me, Iris. He closed his eyes, bracing like a soldier before an inevitable blow. Mrs. West. The name alone sounded like a prayer. I had to know. I couldn't reach him. Wally, I. Her voice cracked, every word turning into fragments. Alfred drew in a deep breath before answering. Mrs. West, I can calm your heart. Master Wally is alive. An immediate sob. Iris took a few seconds before she could speak. Thank God. I haven't heard anything since the beginning. Barry is gone, and I feared I had lost them both. I understand your torment, ma'am, but I can assure you, Wally is well, and he is not alone. He has been a vital force for Master Grayson, for all of us. He's taking care of the others, isn't he? That's what Wally does. Always wanted to prove he could carry more than people expected of him. That is correct. Wally allowed himself a small smile. Young Master West has inherited far more from Mr. Allen's speed. He inherited his courage and his heart. And then the name escaped her throat. Barry. The sound lingered in the air like a ghost. Alfred tightened his grip on the receiver, keeping his voice steady. Wally is honoring his memory, Mrs. West. On the other hand, she wept. Alfred did not try to fill the space with empty words. He simply remained present, holding the silence between sobs, like someone offering an invisible shoulder. When Iris finally regained her breath, she whispered, I'm sorry, I just... There's nothing to apologize for. His voice was firm yet gentle. The world has changed. We are all just trying to find a way through it. She breathed deeply. I'm helping as much as I can in Central City, but it's all so hard. I understand. Alfred spoke with the calm of one who had seen the worst of war. When you can, come to Gotham. The doors will always be open to you and yours. Iris gave a faint laugh, through tears. Thank you, Alfred. Thank you for taking care of him. Always. He answered without hesitation. When the line went dead, silence returned. Alfred remained still for long moments, the phone still in his hand. Then he lifted his eyes to the window. Gotham's sky, gray and heavy, seemed to watch in silence. Voices that survive. And he knew more than ever that what his role was. Not just to keep their bodies safe, but to preserve their bonds, their memories, and the humanity that still remained. Finished with part 3, now part 4 of chapter 10, A Home Awaits. The soft click of the phone settling back into its cradle echoed faintly through the empty kitchen, and then silence returned. Thick and familiar, like an invisible curtain draped over every corner of Wayne Manor. Alfred stood still for a moment, his eyes resting on the dark, polished wood of the counter, before releasing a quiet sigh. No more voices, only memories. He left the kitchen and moved through the silent halls, each step echoing like a recollection. The walls held more than paintings and furniture. They carried the muffled laughter of young Bruce, the hurried footsteps of Dick rushing off to training, the deep voice of Bruce calling him to yet another night in Gotham. He climbed the stairs with his usual quiet and grace, as he had done countless times before, entered Bruce's study. Here, Time seemed to have stopped. The portrait of the Wayne family still hung above the fireplace, untouched, a monument to what had been lost, and to what, somehow, still endured. Alfred drew close, his eyes tracing Thomas's stern expression, Martha's graceful smile, and then, inevitably, resting on Bruce. So young in the painting, yet already shadowed by the weight that would follow him for life. Beside it stood a smaller, more recent photograph. Dick, caught in a rare, carefree smile. The kind of smile that now felt so far away. Without realizing it, Alfred let his fingertips to graze the edge of the frame. Now it's me, he murmured, a weary half smile tugging at his lips. The last adult laugh. Not a warrior, not a hero, just a caretaker, the guardian of the home. It wasn't his mission to battle villains or save cities. His task, perhaps the most essential of all, was to ensure those young ones never forgot who they were, nor where they belonged. He turned with renewed purpose and began walking through the manor, silent as if performing some ancient sacred ritual. His first stop was Dick's room. He opened the windows to let in cool Gotham air, but left the heavy curtains drawn, knowing the boy, now a leader, needed as much shelter as fresh air. He made the bed with military precision, then softened the pillows, remembering how, as a child, Dick used to complain they were too hard to sleep on. Next, he crossed the hall and opened the door to an empty room near Dick's. He paused at the threshold, eyes scanning the dusty, silent space. "This one will do for Wally," he murmured, pulling the curtains aside and letting fresh air sweep in. He set about preparing the room, laying out clean sheets, folding an extra blanket at the foot of the bed, and placing a pitcher of fresh water on the dresser. "I hope this will be comfortable enough for him." Alfred reflected quietly, with the sober understanding that comfort had become a rare luxury these days. He walked down another hallway and prepared two more rooms. There was no certainty, only hope. As he stretched the sheets with practiced precision, his thoughts drifted to Roy. A simple room, practical without any adornments, just as the boy would likely prefer. And in the next room, he added more delicate touches. A comfortable chair by the window where Zatanna might sit to read or meditate, just as he knew she liked to do. He paused for a moment, staring into an empty room. "I hope you come with them. I hope you come with them," he whispered, his words swallowed by the silence that echoed back at him. At the last door, Alfred slowed his steps. This room he had reserved for Izuku, the young man from another land, whose very essence still felt like a mystery to everyone. Preparing a space for him wasn't just about smoothing sheets or dusting furniture. It was symbolic. He entered, turned on the lamp, and looked around at the untouched space. The bed was made, the desk clean, the walls unmarked by life. It all carried the coldness of something new, impersonal. Alfred ran a hand across the back of the chair and let out a quiet sigh. "An empty room is not a home," he murmured to himself. So he added small details. An extra blanket folded at the foot of the bed, a glass of water on the nightstand, the curtains drawn just enough to let the moon peek through. Simple things, just enough to give warmth to the place. When he was done, he stepped back to observe. There was no memories left here, no photographs, no traces of a past, unlike Dick's room. But there was space. Space for the boy to write his own story. Space, perhaps, for new bonds to form. Alfred closed the door gently, as if sealing a blank chapter waiting to be written. When he finished, he looked down the long corridor and drew in a steady breath. Now came the task that, perhaps, mattered the most, making the house feel like home. He returned to the kitchen and began preparing a hot meal, just as he once did in times of peace. He set a pot of water on the stove, waiting it to begin to warm, then unwrapped a fresh bundle of basil. The leaves released a sharp green fragrance that quickly filled the air. Alfred smiled faintly, thinking of Dick. The boy, no, the young man who had grown before his very eyes, always preferred something simple. Pasta with tomato sauce and fresh basil, served with warm bread, nothing extravagant, nothing excessive. It was curious. Amid a life built on shadows, danger, and masks, Dick always sought light in the most ordinary of things. Alfred finally chopped the basil leaves. His thoughts deepened. Perhaps that was Dick's greatest gift, the ability to turn the ordinary into something extraordinary. Where Bruce saw discipline, Dick found freedom. Where others chased glory, Dick only longed for a touch of normalcy. Maybe that, Alfred mused, was what made the boy the heart of the house, and perhaps, some day, the heart of something greater. A quiet chuckle escaped him. For Wally, no dish was ever enough, so long as it came in abundance. A lasagna and a generous heap of fries would be a safe choice for the restless speedster. When his mind turned to Midoriya, Alfred hesitated. The boy was still finding his place here, but his roots were clear. Ramen, perhaps, or a simple curry, something to remind him of a faraway home. Roy's meal was easy to decide. Roasted meat, strong, straightforward without pretenses, just like the boy himself. And Zatanna, memories stirred of long conversations with her father, herbal teas, delicate butter cakes, small comforts that spoke of both of her and Zatara. As he stored ingredients, set the oven, and stirred sauces in the pan, another thought crossed his mind, half practiced, half tender. How am I going to get them to actually sit down and eat? He could already imagine it. He would return exhausted, yet restless, heavy with adrenaline and the weight of their choices. Perhaps he would have to insist with that look even Bruce never dared to challenge. Or perhaps he would simply leave the table ready, letting the irresistible aroma of food fill the halls, drawing them in without a word. When everything was prepared, Alfred lit the fireplace in the rooms, cracked the curtains to let in the dim glow of the evening, and finally made his way upstairs. He stepped into the terrace. The Gotham sky hung heavy, scarred by rising columns of smoke, open wounds that refused to close. The cold wind carried with it the metallic tang of ruin and the distant wail of sirens. Alfred stood tall, hands folded behind his back, breathing deeply. The sky darkened slowly, but his eyes remained fixed on the horizon, where city and chaos merged. He knew they would come. They always came, and when they did, with a nomadic gesture, he straightened his jacket, squared his shoulders, and with the calm certainty of a man who had never doubted his purpose, murmured to himself, "They're on their way. They're on their way. And when they arrive, there will be a home waiting for them." And that was it for chapter 10, A Home Awaits. Sorry for my shit British accent. I literally grew up watching Canadian and American YouTubers, family friendly of course. I barely even watched any British ones. I mean, yeah. Even though my teachers were English teachers were like British English and all that fancy stuff, I still never got the hang of English pronunciation of more more proper. Yeah, so if it sucks, yeah, sorry. Anyway, so also the last line is they're on their way when they arrive, there will be a home waiting for them. If it wasn't clear from how I said it, I know I didn't even understand myself. So yeah. Oh wow. Oh yeah. That was it for this chapter of After the Fall by innocent with one N underscore reader. Hope you like this. Go check them out on AO3. Link will always be in the description as always. And yeah. Bye. I guess until next time.